Welcome once again to the DRH show. Today I'm joined by a psychologist, Dr. Irina Roncaglia. Thanks for joining me.
Hello, Dennis, and thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on the show.
Well, thanks for accepting my invitation, Dr. Roncaglia. Now, I understand that you have a quite unusual background as a researcher because initially you did not intended to be a researcher, if I understand it correctly. You first started as a dancer. So could you just share to us the trajectory of your career and also paint us a picture of your childhood?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Dennis, for the opportunity. Indeed, I started really my career as a professional ballet dancer after quite a number of years of studies. I danced professionally with the now English National Ballet for over 15 years. And as the career of a dancer, it's fairly short. I was able to retired from the dancing career and pursue some studies. And my curiosity has been always looking at how the mind and body connects and how we can optimize the functioning through ensuring that the mind is well connected to the tool, to our body. And so I pursued a first degree in psychology and dance studies, which then led me to a doctorate in life course studies. But it was a mixture of psychology, sociology, and specifically looking at the retirement transition in elite dancers and the career that the dancer do have to ensure that they are in their mid 30s or 40s, engaging in fulfilling careers. So that's really a snapshot. But what I am now, I'm a practitioner psychologist. And I am registered with the Healthcare Professional Councils. I'm a sports and exercise psychologist. I hold the clinical lead role as well with a larger charity, and I really work with elite performers, with dancers. I work as well, my work takes me around learning difficulties and autism as well. So it's quite broad. I'm a member of the International Association excuse me, of Dance Medicine and Science, and really presently a committee member of the London and Home County of the British Psychological Society. I am an associate fellowship with the BPS, and hold divisional membership with the Division of Sports and Exercise Psychology, as well as the Division of Coaching Psychology and Qualitative Method in Psychology. So I guess that's like a very quick whirlwind of my background and how I came about to harness the curiosity that I hold for psychology, and how psychology can really support us in optimizing our functioning and our well-being.
It's definitely a colorful transition from being a dancer to being a researcher, and now with your multiple roles within psychological organizations. But I'd just like to explore more about your PhD research project, because you mentioned earlier that you're interested about how body movements promotes positive mental health. So could you please talk more about it?
Yes, of course, Dennis. Thank you. So my research in terms of the PhD, which was also part of the small project for my Bachelor of Science in Psychology and Dance Study, is really stems from personal experience. How having to transition mid 30s, mid 40s in a completely different area, or even when remaining within the dance world, the change in the career transition that takes place for an individual when their professional career stops is quite significant. So there were elements whereby I was looking at the identity of a dancer, looking at the social support that a dancer may or indeed may not receive throughout the transition, the emotional impact. There is a lot of investment in the career of dancers, and it's a whole encompassing sort of profession where you are part of this sort of cocoon and dance world, and that presents obviously challenges when your identity has been defined purely by your profession. And so my interest and curiosity stemmed in looking at what sort of support is there for people that transition. So career transition in general, retirement transitions, taking and looking at different models. At the time, my PhD is quite a few years back in between 2001 and 2007, and looking at psychological theory, sociological theory, to really better understand what the transition entails emotionally, mentally, physically, and how we can prepare people that transition to different careers in a better way, again, harnessing strengths and harnessing abilities of the individual, which again looked at my interest and my curiosity in the sort of the brand or the strand of a positive psychology, whereby we are looking at strengths and character strengths and values and a sense of flourishing in people, rather than always trying to look at fixing what is it that is not gone so well, or what is wrong, or what is broken. So throughout my PhD, qualitative methodology were used, specifically interpretative phenomenological analysis, a small sample, and then specifically focusing on 3 case studies, which then stemmed a model, a career transition model, which try to provide some insight and understanding of the different facets and the different elements that are part of this complex process. And so rather than seeing it as an event in time, which can be quite difficult for some dancers, is really looking at it as a process, and a process that provides opportunity for growth, a process that provides opportunity even with challenges that are associated to an ability to disengage with that passion, with that world. But it's really a process that provides opportunity to build, to harness a different type of skill, what we call it transferable skills. And certainly in a world where change becomes really a constant, the VUCA world that everybody is talking about is really trying to ensure that changes, that the agility, the curiosity, the flexibility in harnessing, in developing, in strengthening different skills are really opening up the doors to new careers and to new opportunities. And what that has led me, I mean, my PhD is really all the way back in 2007, so quite a few years back, is revisiting that model that I suggested, that I proposed, and how, in light of the last 2 years of the pandemic, where a lot of dancers might have had to come to a decision, voluntary or involuntary, to really think about a different pathway, a different career, how the model can be still applicable, and what changes we needed to implement in order to facilitate a transition that can lead to a good quality of life and well-being. So that's in a nutshell again the PhD, the transition of dancers.
Yes, and I just want to explore more a bit about your method of research because you mentioned you do mostly qualitative research. So, what do you think are the strengths and disadvantages of doing qualitative?
Yes, thank you. A very important question. There is certainly throughout the years of my experience as a research, of course, throughout the PhD within an institution, but then becoming more an independent research is really this dichotomy between quantitative and qualitative research, and my research methodology was purely qualitative, so it was semi-structured interviews with the 14 ballet dancers that had retired at different times. So I wanted to capture a dancer that had just retired, dancer that had retired for 5 years and for more than 10 years. And the really the benefits of qualitative research is that although the sample, as I said, was quite small, and we do have criticism in the field as that is not replicable, or it might lose some level of validity because it's such a small sample. I think the granularity and the opportunity to really bring up different nuances to the actual experience of retirement transition is extremely valuable, and it is even extremely valuable in just one case study. And certainly qualitative research from the time that I conducted my PhD back in 2001 2007, and I had the wonderful experience to have Jonathan Smith as the founder of interpretative phenomenological analysis as an examiner has moved certainly forward in the last 10 years with a better recognition of the value of qualitative research, with, of course, sound and ground rigor, with the sound methods implemented within the qualitative sort of research methodologies. So it's not just it's not just something that provides a superficial information, and by abiding to the sort of the boundaries that are implied within qualitative methodological research is enriching our knowledge, and provides opportunity as well to maybe combine in future research projects the benefit of qualitative research with the quantitative research, but certainly doesn't take away the benefits that qualitative research brings to the table.
Absolutely, and I suppose with your line of interest, you're drawing from the experience of retired dancers. It's really important to kind of showcase it from a personal narrative. As you've said, it's really important that your method showcase the granularity of the experience, and I think that's one thing that qualitative research is very good at capturing. Now, of course, more recently you presented your research at ICPC 2022, and if I remember it right, you presented on the topic of resilience. So, for the benefit of those who have not attended ICPC, can you talk about your two research that you presented?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Dennis, again for the opportunity. It was absolutely a pleasure to present this two projects. So the first project was really a retrospective reflection from a practitioner psychology experience, having worked with elite performance, having worked with ballet dancers, and the service that I had provided for a period of time to dancers. So I presented the model of consultation that I used for a specific company, looking at how we can support dancers who are all self-referred to the service, so they recognize some more than others the benefit of psychological input, psychological theories, and the ability really to use and harness again the mind, the ability to recognize the reasons or the potential factors that might influence a level of anxiety. And we are talking here about performance anxiety, or the ability for dancer to return following injury, whether through a surgery or through an injury, or general challenges in terms of career pathway and the ability and the opportunity still to grow within a ballet company that can be in itself quite a challenge. So the service that I provided and the paper that I presented was to demonstrate how the process was taking place. So the model of consultation, self-referred, the dancer were self-referring to my service, one-to-one rather than group sessions. So really trying to, through formulation, through a case history, through looking and having an assessment, a baseline assessment with the client, with the dancer in front of me. It's really to try to together to facilitate a way of addressing the issues. So very much using strength-based models of practice, using positive psychology, using and looking at coping skills and tolerance skills, and looking at resiliency as a way of harnessing the strengths of the individual, and really providing a pathway with Socratic questioning and other methods used in my practice, in ensuring that we are looking at driving forces that help the dancer to embrace the change, and looking at minimizing and potentially really erasing the restraining forces, so that the responses that are provided by the dancer, the behavioral responses in a specific situation, are conducive to a positive outcome. And the research, so the retrospective reflection as a practitioner psychologist, looked at different areas that came about, and really emphasizing the importance of self-growth, and how the dancer throughout the session were able to again tap into a notion of self-belief and self-esteem and self-growth, the ability to look at resiliency not as a way of being rigid and stronger, which is part really of the culture of the dancing world, although it's again changing. It's this notion of being, if you're rigid, you're being strong, you work harder and harder, is actually changing that and having that agility and flexibility to respond in different way to different challenges that are presented to the individual. And then reflections about almost looking at how labeling psychological input and psychological knowledge in seeing it in a positive way, and that's where positive psychology comes into it, so that you're not reaching out to a sports and exercise psychologist or a psychologist just when things are actually wrong, but try to use the knowledge proactively. And so looking at how we can improve psychological services in dance companies, and it is definitely changes from when I was myself a dancer, just taking examples of sports and sports science. So not looking at a psychologist when there are things that are broken, so very much a medical model, but looking at a sports psychologist and different obviously experience of different strands of psychology as a way of preventing from things going into a crisis, harnessing the strengths, harnessing the abilities, harnessing the skills that each individual has got and might need just that sort of guidance in order to build psychological mental skills in order to address then the barriers and the challenges that might be faced throughout a career. So that's the first small project. So it was really reflection through my practice in order to better understand how we can improve psychological services and the importance of having psychologists working in organizations such as small and large dance companies. And when I say dance companies, it doesn't have to be just specifically ballet companies who are doing fairly well because they've got the funding, but having that sort of service as part of the medical team. So as much as we are looking for physiotherapists, as much as we are looking for strength and conditioning coaches, as much as we are looking for Pilates in terms of, again, conditioning of the body, it's having psychologists that are available to support the dancers with that part of the work. And then the second project that I had the opportunity to present at the International Conference of Psychology and Counseling and Education, chaired by yourself, Dennis, was relooking at the career transition in dancers that I spoke earlier.
Those are really wonderful topic, and I really like the way that you argue that you mentioned about self-reflection, self-growth, and resilience. This could be best, I suppose, explored when you're doing a qualitative research. But how would you address those criticisms that they say that it's not a very objective way of measuring, I suppose, the efficacy of dance? How would you address those criticisms?
Yes, that's a very, very good question. I mean, if we are coming from the starting point that any type of research has to provide an addition to existing knowledge and the opportunity to ask new questions that are leading to a better understanding of a situation, of an event, then I would argue that qualitative research is certainly providing an opportunity with the right methodology. And of course, IPA is only one strand. There are a lot of different qualitative methods, but it's really the opportunity to walk into the experience of an individual or a range of individual in a more in-depth manner, and therefore having that sort of in-depth knowledge of what the experience has actually been, as long as the researcher has obviously an opportunity to address the influences and the biases that are coming with any type of methodology. Really, we are just, of course, providing greater advancement in the knowledge of a specific topic. So I'm certainly I like to come into debates about it's neither one or the other. So I am a great advocate, and I'm not saying that qualitative research can eventually replace quantitative research. I think we needed to be humble enough to be able to recognize that both have got their value. And in fact, if both that got their value, is having a combination of those two methods that will only strengthen our research, the field of research in general. I don't know if it has answered your question.
Absolutely, you put it very elegantly, Dr. Roncaglia. That indeed it's complementary. We don't have to pick between qualitative research and quantitative research, and of course they have their own strength and weaknesses. But this time, I just want to pivot our conversation to other research interests that you have. You mentioned during the introduction that you're also interested about autism. So can you please share some of your research in this area?
Yes, of course, Dennis. So so really, my clinical lead role with a large charity is looking at supporting autistic individuals, their families, and really looking at the condition as a spectrum. And research in that field, it's vast, and it's looking at how we can recognize again the strengths of autistic individual, recognizing that the world is beautiful in its complexities, and having neurodiverse individual can only enrich our communities, can only enrich our work. The research that I have conducted in the field, it's very small scale, and it's more what I call it action research. So through single case study, through having an understanding on the impact of the practices, and I work very much not in isolation. So it's again bringing that notion of transdisciplinarity into play, whereby different disciplines can actually enrich the understanding of the potential challenges or opportunities, as I like to call it, in order to unpick, in order to provide the best opportunity to improve quality of life and to improve overall well-being. So it's really, again, a bit the same sort of argument between quantitative and qualitative research, is actually recognize the strengths of occupational therapists, speech and language therapists, psychologists, social workers, and being able to bring together from the starting point the case, and with the autistic individual, if they have the ability, of course, to express, to try to find a solution to the difficulties. So very much the work that I promote is transdisciplinarian, and it's embedded. So in order to facilitate accessibility to learning, accessibility to education, accessibility to growth for an individual, is try to understand and harness again the expertise of each of these different disciplines in order to better understand and to create an environment that is conducive to growth. The challenge comes when the different disciplines are working in isolation, are working as a silos. And when that happens, is that everyone has got the solution, but is not coordinated all together for the benefit of the individual, which needs to be collaborative right from the start, with the individual at the center. But I'm very passionate about this notion of transdisciplinarity, and certainly psychology field would benefit in order to recognize the strengths and the benefits that comes with that sort of notion, that different expertise needs to be brought together, and the ability to recognize, and having the sort of humbleness to recognize that all the people might have the expertise, but then at the end it's having that common language in addressing the issue, in addressing the challenge that it is in front of us. And I believe as well that large organization would benefit as well. So that comes from my sort of more coaching side and systemic way of providing solution within an organization. And again, it's that collaborative way of working, that facilitating way of working, role modeling, recognizing and respecting, that's the word I was looking for, respecting each other's expertise and knowledge, and then come to an agreement of a way forward, a pathway forward. And if challenges along the way, because the certainty is that challenges will actually happen throughout the time, is being able to become so self-aware that you can open those conversations, and you can open again the space safely in having those conversations, to then relook at how challenges can be turned into opportunity. Is when people are working in silence, when people are almost fearful of knowledge of other people, that you become very fractured. Whether in small little system or larger system, it becomes very fractured, and therefore it doesn't become very effective, and potentially becomes not a healthy working environment.
Absolutely, and thank you for giving us some idea on how we could manage professional conflicts, I suppose, within transdisciplinary team. And you pointed that it's really important that we respect each other's expertise. And thank you for talking about your experience in carrying out research within the field of autism. But just to follow up on autism, what would you say are some of the greatest misconceptions about autism? Because obviously you've carried out a lot of research in autism, so I would imagine you have come across with a number of misconceptions. So if you could address some of them.
Yes, of course. One of the, I guess, greatest misconception about autism, and I take it with work really at early ages of the journey, when a family may get a diagnosis of autism, is the misconception that it's something that you can be cured of, which of course it is, and is a neurodevelopmental condition. It's a lifelong learning, and we should be able to celebrate the, as I said, the neurodiversity and the incredible skills and incredible strengths that autistic individual can actually bring to society. So in my experience, that is probably the biggest one. It's changing, but as I said, when meet right at the beginning, and perhaps a family have just had their child diagnosed with autism, this misconception that if there is enough therapeutic input, or if there is enough specialism within the services, that their child will grow out of it, which is in itself very, very harmful, because we should be able, as I said, to celebrate the diversity that autism spectrum condition brings to our lives.
And thank you for sharing your research, because I suppose the kind of work that you do, not just as a researcher but also as a practitioner, highlights those misconceptions and in a way addresses some of them. Let's talk about your expertise when it comes to organizational well-being, because I noticed on your website that you also talk about this. So organizational well-being, it's a two-way street, but how can employees themselves promote a healthy workplace, not just expecting employers themselves to do the work?
Yes, it's again a fascinating question, Dennis, because we in organization we never work in isolation, and healthy organization is where we are able to facilitate spaces where mistakes and errors and setbacks are actually celebrated, rather than providing a culture where mistakes, errors, and setbacks are either penalized or punished. So it's providing an atmosphere, and is providing an organization. I'm taking the example both in ballet company, when when I'm involved in providing sort of lectures or workshop on resiliency, and the opportunity to really look at how mistakes and setbacks are part and parcel of the ability and the opportunity to grow. So it's having that trust, it's having that sort of open and transparent culture, where an organization respects the individual, respects each of the individuals that are part of a system, and really provides opportunity creatively to celebrate there are setbacks, and recognize that a systematic way of analyzing when things have not gone well, when a performance has not gone well, is the opportunity to actually see it in a balanced and rational way, because there is always certain things that might not be necessarily seen, but that were positive within that specific event. So with performers on an individual basis, I really look at ensuring that within a performance that might have been perceived by the performer, and I don't necessarily speak about performance on stage, performance generally, is looking at having a very balanced and self-aware analysis of what the performance was. How was the performance? What were the aspects that were positive? What were the aspects that were not so positive? And what is it that I can learn from those aspects? And that in itself is part of what we call a sort of a gritty mind and a resiliency mind, whereby I can analyze without being negatively affected the mistakes that I have made, and use those as harnessing my drive to improve, my drive to learn a new skill, my drive, or even fuel for my curiosity and my motivation in learning those specific skills that will make a difference and will help me to improve the next time that I embrace or engage in that same performance. So it's having that kind of balance and the ability to regulate my emotions, because clearly when we are faced by mistakes and errors, we are only human. We might be focusing only on the negatives and be overwhelmed by those maladaptive behavior, potentially, and negative emotions, from which I need to be able to, again, self-regulate, recognize those emotions, label those emotions, and being able to use my coping skills, my tolerance skills, my problem solving skill, my solution focus skills that are helping me then to return to a sort of level of homeostasis, so a level of balanced mood, to be able to analyze and to be able to think, what is it that I can do next time, rather than just focusing and automatically being driven by negative automatic thoughts and negative automatic emotions that are leading me to a potentially poor performance. So, or going back to your original question, if each individual is equipped and is learning how to optimize their own performance, and then systemically we create a culture in an organization that by making those errors and those mistakes, it gives us an opportunity to understand and know what sort of skills, what sort of areas needs improvement, then the organization in itself will move forward.
Absolutely. And just a quick question in relation to workplace well-being, because there's a new trend now, and this is prompted by the lockdown, that we're encouraging people to do remote working. So are you in favor of that personally?
I think that it would have to be decided by the individual. We are all different. So if we are starting from the premises and the basis that we are all different, and what works for me might not necessarily work for you, Dennis, and vice versa, then we need to be able to have that choice. There are, of course, restrictions in terms of the type of roles and workplaces where remote working is not possible, and therefore we needed to be able to embrace that and accept that. But the silver lining, so looking at the positive of what the COVID has brought to us, and I think I touched upon when I presented at the conference, is the importance and the significance of pausing. We seem all the time to value our our existence by doing all the time. It's doing all the time, and by the doing we are measuring how successful we are. And I guess that the COVID pandemic has been tragic for many, but if we're looking at the positive that have come out of that, is really an opportunity to pause. We need to rediscover the importance and the significance and the values of human being rather than human doing. And so the importance of mindfulness, the importance of a moment of stillness in itself, it's so valuable and precious that it really brings a lot of richness to individual. And it may not be for everyone. So in the same way, as I said, what works for me might not necessarily work for you, Dennis, and vice versa, is the ability for each individual to have that moment of reflection and recognition that by just being, that it has got value in itself. That moment of stillness, that moment of pausing for a second, in a world where we are always doing, we're always trying to do more, and we're always trying to measure our successes on how much we have actually accomplished. But the accomplishment in itself, by that moment of stillness, but that sort of pause, is crucial, which provides an opportunity to explore moments of gratitude. And there is a whole body of research that has come out from positive psychology, the importance of being grateful for what we have, and sometimes by doing all the time, we are forgetting of what is it that we are already harnessing, what already we have.
Yeah. Thank you for reminding us again, Dr. Roncaglia, of the importance of spending with our time with ourselves, and like what you've said, it's important to be grateful and not just to work all the time. Now we talk about your research when it comes to organizational psychology and also autism, and also with positive psychology. We're already approaching towards the end of this interview, so I just want to wrap this up with some quick fire questions so we could learn more about Dr. Roncaglia as a person rather than as a researcher. So, my first question to you is, what were you afraid of as a child?
Ooh, interesting. I think as a child, I was afraid of failure. Yeah. Not succeeding, which tells a lot,
Yeah.
given that I spoke about how to measure our successes, and hopefully my journey has taught me that successes can be measured in many different ways.
Yes. And what is your favorite word in another language?
Ooh, well, because English is my second language. I mean, I was originally born in Italy. And I speak French, so I've got a bit of a choice. I haven't thought about that. Arcobaleno, that's rainbow in Italian.
Rainbow. It's a very colorful one. And I love Italian. It's kind of like a very forceful language, especially when you said that word. And if you
Musical.
musical, yeah, it is musical and theatrical as well. Um, if you weren't a dancer or a psychologist, what would you have pursued in your life?
Medical doctor. That was yes, that was in fact that's what I wanted to pursue after my dancing career, but the pathway was slightly different. So a surgeon.
Yeah, and you're still a doctor, yeah, a doctor of philosophy. And finally, the floor is all yours. If people wanted to reach out to you, what platforms can they get in touch with you at? Do you have any upcoming projects, any upcoming research that you're working on?
Well, thank you again for the opportunity. I am on the Twitter social media platform. And as part of the committee of the British Psychological Society, London and home counties, we are in the process of organizing a number of events for the next year. One of which is I'm very keen to invite external speakers on talking again about resiliency and the misconception of resilience, and how we are understanding differently what resilience is. Has had some kind of bad press, and in the last few years. So those are events, for you maybe to look out. And you can always contact me via my Twitter handle. I've got a website, so please do reach out. But thank you for the opportunity, Dennis.
Lovely. And just to be clear to the audience, we're recording this last week of November. You might be watching this now in January 2023. So when Dr. Roncaglia said next year, it's actually 2023. Yeah, that's it, Dr. Roncaglia. It's a pleasure talking to you, a practicing psychologist and a researcher. It's great to have you here on the DRH show. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and all the best for your future shows and your career, Dennis.
Thank you. You too.